Please be seated. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December 2017 College of Education Commencement and Recognition of Teacher Education Program Completion ceremonies this evening. I am Dan Clay, and I'm the Dean in the College of Education, and I want to extend an especially warm welcome to the families of our graduates and teacher education program completers. I know that the room is filled with parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, and lots of other folks who've given their support to our students. We're so pleased to have you with us to congratulate the students on their achievements today. We are most privileged and grateful to have been a part of your family for these last few years. The entire university community shares in your pride and your happiness in this very special occasion. And on the way in the hallway, I noticed the smiles on the faces were bigger today than they were before finals were earlier in the week. I can assure you of that. Allow me to acknowledge the many people assisting us with this commencement ceremony today. I would ask you to please stand when I announce and hold your applause to the end if you would. Our sign language interpreter, Scotty Van Eisingham. Representing the university's central administration and conferring degrees this evening is our president of the University of Iowa, Bruce Harold. Also joining us today is Nancy Dunkel, member of the Board of Regents here in the state of Iowa. Joining me in the celebration on stage today from our College of Education, Nancy Languth, the Associate Dean for Teacher Education and Student Services, and Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Graduate Programs, Amanda Hartling-Tyne. On stage today, along with their program's students, are the faculty program coordinators and representatives from their respective programs. Again, please stand as you're introduced. Rory Carson from Elementary Education, Amy Schultz, English Education, Danny Hong, Mathematics Education, Jeremy Manternock, Music Education, Greg Hammett, Social Studies Education, and Sean Datchuk, Special Education. In addition, here in the front, we recognize the faculty who have contributed to our students' success through their teaching, academic advising, supervising of field experiences. Would you also please stand so that we can recognize you as well? So please join me in giving a round of applause for these representatives. This evening, I am honored to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Martin G. Carver. Mr. Carver is the former chairman of the board and chief executive officer and president of Bandag Incorporated, a Muscatine, Iowa-based company that provided retreading materials, equipment, and tire management services to franchise dealers in more than 100 countries. A native of Muscatine, Mr. Carver earned a bachelor's degree in business from the University of Iowa, and he earned an MBA from Indiana University. In 1986, Mr. Carver was recognized by Financial World magazine as the CEO of the year in the rubber and plastics industry. Then, 3 years later, the same magazine named him the CEO of the decade in a broader category of chemicals industry. He's a big Hawkeye fan, Mr. Carver. He supports athletics. He supports business and the arts. Most recently, he was honored by the University of Iowa Alumni Association with a Distinguished Alumni Award for Achievement. He also received the recognition for his support and contributions to the Muscatine community and to the University of Iowa. But that's not why Mr. Carver is with us this evening. He's here because he's a champion of education. He has too many recognitions to go through tonight. But one of the most important things that he's done is he's given his time, his talent, his ideas, and his own financial resources to make a difference in public education. He believes in teachers, and he believes in public schools. As a highly successful businessman, he understands the importance of education. As a fellow Hawkeye and as a champion of education, please join me in welcoming Marty Carver.
Good afternoon, graduates. Please accept my congratulations for your achievements. Parents, family, and friends here this afternoon, I am sure you're very proud of your graduates today. And Dean Clay, thank you very much. That was a very kind introduction. I'm truly honored that you invited me here this afternoon to address this class of 2017. Today is a first in a number of ways. You are the first graduating class of Iowa's new Bachelor of Arts in Education degree. For most of you, this is your first college degree. For me, this is my first commencement address, so go easy on me. It may not have really sunk in yet, but the career that you have chosen, educating our children and adults, carries with it an extraordinary responsibility. We're putting the next generation of our society, ostensibly our entire civilization, in your hands. I think you have probably had some sense of this notion, this responsibility in the back of your mind for some time. A friend of mine told me about a t-shirt his minister wears. It says, "Ministry, I'm not in it for the income. I'm in it for the outcome." And you know, it struck me that all the best teachers I've known would relate to that. Peggy Noonan, a speechwriter for Presidents Reagan and Bush, wrote, and quote, "It is embarrassing to live in the most comfortable time in the history of man and not be happy. We all have so much. Somewhere in the 60s or 70s, we started expecting to be happy and changed our lives if we weren't. We left town, left families, switched jobs," end quote. And to what end? Ms. Noonan observed, and quote, "Our search for it has caused such unhappiness." Now, before you think that all sounds too grim, Ms. Noonan also wrote, "Children remind you that happiness is the natural state. Grown-ups forget that." So what caused the expectations of happiness to lead to such disappointment? It's simple. Extrinsic things had become our metrics for success. And they still are, maybe even more so. That is, status, rankings, power, wealth, poverty, and possessions, even fear. All things fueled by information, not knowledge, not wisdom. By the 60s, that information was pouring into every American home via television or radio at a rate never seen before. And by comparison, today's information overload is an absolute fire hose in the face when we just want a drink of water. Business was not immune from the obsession with extrinsic incentives. At the company I worked for, Bandag, whom employees depended on for purposeful, fulfilling work. But then I met Dr. W. Edwards Deming. A lot of you may not know him, but he was the gentleman that went to Japan right after the war when Japan was in ashes and taught the Japanese statistical process control. Within 5 years, the Japanese were dominating optics, consumer electronics, automobiles, and a lot of other products. Deming's theory of profound knowledge, and particularly his discourse on learning, started a transformation personally in me and the company along with it. Deming awakened something. It struck a chord still connected to that natural state of happiness. I remember that as a kid. I liken it to my internal tuning fork. This is what transformation taught me, and if I can impart anything to you, I hope it will be this. Joy in learning comes not so much from what was learned, but from the learning itself. Here's why it's so important. People, regardless of age, experience extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So we need you, our educators, to know how to rightly divide these two incentive systems because they can have such a profound impact on individuals, families, our schools, and communities. You'll be caught up in the middle, but that can be a good place to be. Extrinsic motivation comes from the outside. It includes awards, recognition, gold stars, wages when you're paid at or above market, grades, cars, a house, maybe even a country club. Such things are nice to have, but dangerous when they become our life's purpose and motivation. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, comes from the inside. It's the recognition that we give to ourselves and tells us fundamentally that we're okay with the world and with our place in it. It's what we were born to do. It's our definition of a life well lived. And when we are really in tune with this calling voice in our hearts, this passion in the extreme, the result can be Michelangelo, Einstein, Cassatt, Shakespeare, Plato, Lincoln. These people's epitaphs were not defined by power, money, or external measures of achievement. They were driven, and in some cases almost obsessed, with finding answers, expressing extreme beauty, or advancing the human condition. When we start to think about it, winning is in some grim universal win-lose contest, life becomes an exercise in Darwinian survival that robs us of any sense of mission or meaning in life. Remember Peggy Noonan's quote, "We started out expecting to be happy, and we changed our lives if we weren't." Now, don't get me wrong. Life does have its challenges and setbacks, but we often forget that once we have more than met the critical needs of food, shelter, and transportation. In other words, those Maslow levels. In some of our careers, we reach those milestones rather quickly, yet the external world is telling us we shouldn't be satisfied with that. Children are naturally, intrinsically motivated. They approach the world with wonder and an innate sense of learning, exploration, and creativity. Teaching children they should work for extrinsic rewards to the exclusion of our natural joy at plumbing the mysteries, fears, and paradoxes of life, well, that just robs them of their natural, God-given spirit. If they learn to distrust what gives them joy, we have done our children a disservice. Each of us is different. We all have our own internal compass or tuning fork that calls to us and gives us meaning and joy and resonance in life. When we are able to discover that resonance, or even assist another to help them find it, what follows is a thing of wonder, a source of boundless energy that leads to a sense of happiness with life, even though life is not always a bowl of cherries. When I think of intrinsic motivation, I think of the movie The Blind Side. Michael Oher is a homeless black teenager, immense in size. He's taken in by a well-to-do family, the Toys. It seems the only path forward for Michael is football. That's mainly because of his size. Unfortunately, the incentives used at his school don't work. In fact, they almost backfire. There are extrinsic motivations, forced distribution of grades on a curve, trips to the principal's office, tough, humiliating locker room talk by the coach. Still, his guardian mother knows there's potential in this young man. She figures out Michael has these intense protective instincts. She learns Michael really does want to play football. She reasons he really could learn if these other forces of destruction were replaced. So Michael begins to practice and play as if he were protecting his guardian mother and family. An intrinsic motivation. He approaches schoolwork as a pathway to a dream, not a grade. And ironically, his grades improve. He astonishes his coaches and teachers, and the self-esteem grows. Another intrinsic connection. Michael undergoes a transformation that brings his family right along with him. And as most of you know, this is a true story. Michael Oher went on to graduate from high school, got accepted at Ole Miss, where he played football. He was a first-round draft pick in the 2009 NFL and played 8 years as an offensive tackle for the Carolina Panthers. Our world and culture is always trying to measure success extrinsically, often with win-lose measures. In a sports contest, we expect to win or lose. But in life, we don't want losers. Would you want to have a family member or a spouse a loser? The problem comes when measures of success crush any notion of doubt and turn failures into absolute losses. What is learning, if not failing and learning from that failure? This is the core of how we obtain knowledge and advance science. Your role as educators cannot be underestimated, but take heart. Just a small amount of intrinsic awareness can deflect the forces of an out-of-control win-lose culture. You see, in my experience, I've observed that everyone has their own tuning fork. However, not everyone hears it. Sometimes it just needs to be exposed, to be brought out. Some obstacle or interference needs to be cleared away. Other times, a person just needs some reassurance, some encouragement to pursue that thing that's resonating inside them. In the moment you expose a particular gift, encourage a unique ability, or elevate a goal or aspiration, it will be like tapping that tuning fork. Something will resonate clear and pure, an amalgam of God-given gifts and an inner sense of what's the right thing to do for me. You will encounter hundreds, if not thousands, of students in your career. Each will arrive in your classroom with a different set of gifts and capabilities and tuning fork. You'll be obliged and compensated to use a variety of extrinsic measures and tests, but you'll be rewarded most richly for the intrinsic ways that you motivate students for the outcomes. This true story sums it all up. Elsie Harper was an 8th grade teacher in the little town of Preemption, Illinois. A big, gangling, awkward kid named Roy showed up in her class. He was considered a troublemaker, probably incapable of learning. He also seemed to have trouble breathing and hearing. Elsie Harper sensed that child's potential. First, she moved him to the front of the class where he could hear better. Then, on a hunch, Elsie suggested that Roy's father have the boy's tonsils and adenoids checked. They might need to be removed. Sure enough, Roy was an extremely bright child. He just couldn't hear. After his surgery, Roy's academic performance underwent a startling transformation. He graduated with flying colors, and that's not all. I happen to know something about the rest of the story. Roy was my father, Roy J. Carver, and as outcomes go, his was pretty good. Dad's businesses span the globe, but he was most passionate about education and medicine. He supported learning institutions all over the country, but none more generously than the University of Iowa. The outcome might have been so much different if it hadn't been for Elsie Harper, whose greatest impact on young Roy was to set free the joy of learning. Graduates, I think I can safely say that all of you will have opportunities to follow in the steps of Elsie Harper. So spend your careers wisely, and always remember how lucky you are to be directly in touch with that natural state of happiness we call learning. The world's counting on you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Our students were asked to nominate faculty who they felt made an impact on their learning. This year, the faculty member that will be sharing an address is Jeremy Monternock. Jeremy's a native of Anamosa, Iowa, and is currently in his 4th year as a music education faculty member at the University of Iowa. Previously, he spent several years as a high school choral director and professional chorister in the Twin Cities area before pursuing his graduate degrees at the University of Kansas. He then taught at the University of Arizona for 2 years before coming home. In addition to teaching undergraduate and graduate music education courses, he directs the University of Iowa Youth Choral, a high school outreach ensemble, and is advisor of the Collegiate National Association for Music Education Student Group at the University of Iowa. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our faculty speaker, Jeremy Monternock.
Thank you. I am truly humbled to be here. I stand before you, a former high school choir director, feeling far more qualified to sing to you or lead you in song than to speak to you or try to inspire you. I will not be singing or leading you in song, although both would be lovely. But I am humbled to be here. In fact, I'm experiencing symptoms of what many psychologists and researchers refer to as the imposter syndrome. Individuals with imposter syndrome, quote, experience intense feelings that their achievements are undeserved and worry that they are likely to be exposed as a fraud. That is from a 2011 article from the International Journal of Behavioral Science. Cite your sources. I share this with you for 2 reasons. First, I want you to encourage you to lower your expectations of what you might hear from me today. Second, I want to give you a few thoughts on how to work with these feelings if they occur to you. Now, I say if, but there will likely come a time that you stand in front of a classroom and wonder what fools could possibly have thought that you were qualified for such work. Maybe it will come after a classroom management issue or when your students do poorly on an assignment, or maybe it'll just wave over you at some point for no discernible reason. But it likely will come. So what do you do in these moments? How do you turn this crisis into an opportunity, a crisis-tunity, if you will? Here are a few thoughts that I rely on. First, I encourage you to trust yourself and lean in. You have been well prepared. You have knowledge and skills. At this point, it can sometimes feel like you're playing dress up, like you're putting on an act. Know that you are not simply playing the role of a teacher. At this point, you are one. You have been well prepared for a career in a classroom. You've successfully come through a rigorous teacher education program that's given you opportunities to teach one another, reflect on instruction, develop your philosophy, and spend time working in the field with real students, culminating in your student teaching. You are ready for this step. Trust that. Second, take care of yourself. You've experienced how exhausting teaching can be through your student teaching. There is no amount of mentoring we can give you to prepare you for the moment that you will gladly tell your friends that you need to stay in on a Thursday evening and sleep instead of going to the Ped Mall. And you may all remember that moment when you reached for the cute shoes before school, only to remember the blisters and low back pain that they caused the last time. Those experiences are part of growing up. So make habits out of the things that will foster your happiness and health. Eat well, exercise, even just a little. Find leisure time that allows you to experience some moments of calm. Spend some time with the people you love, and perhaps most important, sleep. We know that these things don't all happen all the time in busy lives. We occasionally make some compromises in the short term, but to neglect them in the long term is unsustainable and is a recipe for burnout. You need to be happy and healthy in order to help your students to be happy and healthy. Third, recognize your successes. Whenever I observe my students teaching, we always discuss the experience afterwards, and I ask them what I have come to understand is the most difficult question in our profession. What did you do well? This question is often followed by either confused silence or a veiled criticism wrapped in a positive statement about what someone else did well. We are primed to recognize the moments in which we missed our target, the moments we sometimes refer to as failures or mistakes. These are misnomers. Human brains, that is, human beings, learn by taking target practice. We try something, see what happens, and adjust. We should always reflect on our instruction in order to hone our plans and best serve our students, seek out what didn't work well and speculate as to why that was the case. But much as we do for our own students, be intentional about recognizing your successes. What worked? Great, do it again. Why did it work? How can you expand on that, and how can it inform the parts that didn't work as well? And even just for a moment, enjoy it. Fourth, remember that you are not alone. You have colleagues, many of them sitting next to you, who can be a sounding board for you. Talk to them about how they've dealt with similar issues. Talk to your mentors. Discuss school, life, or even just the Ohio State game. They know where you're coming from. Did you go to that game? I was there. Also, let me assure you that all of us here on this stage, all of your mentors, we have experienced this feeling. May have been as a teacher, a researcher, or even as a parent. Side note, I have a 2-year-old daughter. Did you know that they just let you have kids? There's no exam, there's no ed TPA for kids or a kid TPA or anything like that. So what I'm saying is you are far more prepared to be a teacher than I was to be a parent. So I share this with you not to scare you, but to comfort you. These feelings of inadequacy are natural, they're normal. Recognize them, acknowledge them, and understand that they're simply part of your journey. Finally, realize that even though you're not always aware of it, you are influencing human lives. I spent several years as a high school choral director in the Twin Cities. When I decided to be a teacher, I was set on making incredible music with my high school choirs. Like many teachers around my age, I watched Mr. Holland's opus and was able to overlook the silly and creepy parts to realize that I wanted to inspire people through music. But it wasn't until a few years into my teaching career that I really realized what the it was for me as an educator. I love music, but I realized that if I hadn't been a music teacher, I wouldn't have been most fulfilled by becoming a professional musician. I probably would have been better suited as a science or social studies teacher, maybe even math. The it in music teacher wasn't the music, it was the teacher. Each year I speak to my choral methods class about some of my experiences and why teaching is important to me. I show them a box of memories that has notes, gifts, programs, cards, and any number of other items that came from my students. Each of them comes with a story of a human relationship. You will get these items. In fact, you may already have some of these items from your student teaching. Save them. Look at them when you need a boost or when you're feeling inadequate. They're evidence of your impact. After my last concert as a high school teacher, I spent a good amount of time greeting students. One student, Alicia, approached me. Alicia was a good kid and I really enjoyed teaching her, but she had been frustrating at times. She had a bit of a charming defiance. Alicia came to me and was sobbing. She said, "You were the only one who ever believed in me." And that struck me. I thought, really? Did I? Because I didn't remember that part. But there was something that stuck with her, something that struck her. Maybe it was that when she came into the choir room every day and asked, "Are we going to be singing today in choir?" The answer was yes. The answer was always yes. Maybe it was that I assured her that everyone can learn to sing and that we would keep working on her skills. Or maybe it was something else. But you will impact students, and you won't always know that it's happening at the time. Teaching is sometimes hard and frustrating, and it is often exhausting. But it is also invigorating, inspiring, and filled with meaningful human interactions and relationships. At times, you can literally see lives changing in front of you, and it's one of the noblest professions I can think of. We commend you for reaching this step in your journey, and I speak for all of us, I think, when I encourage you to keep in touch. We're excited to welcome you into the profession, not as an imposter, but as a well-prepared and well-respected colleague. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's now my pleasure to introduce our student speaker, Elizabeth Halverson. Elizabeth graduated high school in May 2014 from Spencer High School in Spencer, Iowa. While she initially came to the University of Iowa as an open major, it didn't take long for her to return to what had been her plan since 7th grade, teaching English language arts. While here at the University of Iowa, Elizabeth has worked as a writing fellow, served as treasurer of Be the Match on campus, and participated 2 years in Dance Marathon. Elizabeth also has been a member of the Alpha Tau Iota English Honors Society since fall 2015. Upon graduation, Elizabeth plans to substitute teach while looking for a permanent position here in the state of Iowa for the 2018-2019 school year. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium our December 2017 student speaker, Elizabeth Halverson.
Hello, everyone. I am honored to be here before you today to speak on behalf of our class. It's funny. All of us will be making speeches and lectures in some form or another for the rest of our lives. Some short, some long, some with unwanted interruptions from students, and some that we will desperately want responses to, only to receive blank stares. We'll have those days. We'll also have days where students come to school tired, frustrated, or with too much energy to focus. But those won't be the only days. I believe my fellow English teachers have all heard this already, but I'd like to share a story from my practicum. Last year, a student who was struggling to focus while reading started a novel and quietly shuffled up to my co-op's desk at the end of class to say, "I don't want to stop reading this book." It wasn't my book choice. I was just the observer in this situation. But I still felt that thrill of a student connecting to the subject matter and having success because his teacher found the right content for him. And this semester, during my student teaching, I had a student in 2 different English classes who struggled to focus and hated blank pages so much that he turned in a plagiarized story in creative writing. But we talked, and we came to an agreement on how to move forward. He took the very beginning of that story and turned it into a completely new one that was all his own. A cautionary tale about grief and emotions became an action piece about trying to start a new life that didn't even resemble the original. And if I'm being honest, I like that one better. There will always be that student who walks in the room and makes you smile because there's such a joy every day to have in class. But there will also be that student who threatens to send you over the edge every other week. Whether we teach 5-year-olds or 15-year-olds, we're all going to have students who seem to take personal pleasure in increasing our stress level. It would be easy to look at these students, say they've got an attitude problem, and move on. But it's not the attitude. It's so many things, and while we can't magically make it better for those students, we can try. We can do a lot just by letting the student know that we're there and that we care about them. They may not want us to care. They may refuse to hear that message at first, but good teachers don't let it end there. Good teachers are stubborn. The student may say that they don't care and that they don't want anyone else to care, but good teachers can see through that. Sometimes we as the teacher need to put in more than the student is willing to in order for them to see their own capabilities. Good teachers change lives. As far as that goes, bad teachers change them too. How many of you have someone in mind when you think about teaching that makes you say, yeah, I'm not gonna do that? Our future teachers need good teachers. They need us to be those teachers, to be the people willing to say, I'm not giving up on you, and you shouldn't either. Will all of those student relationships become perfect? No. I'll admit that creative writing student I mentioned continued to struggle with his writing, and that I saw very few of his assignments on time. But I did get them, and the words were all his. Those of you who took Professor Langouste's classroom management course with me may recognize this little block of wood. It's the piece that she gave us at the end of the semester to remember the 2x4 strategy for engaging with difficult students. To me, it's become a representation not just of that, but generally of the relationships we have with students. It sat on my desk throughout student teaching, and I had one student in particular who was fascinated by it. He loved to steal it as something to play with during class. One day, he signed and dated it so that I won't forget him. Although, even without his name, I doubt that would happen easily. Someone else took his name as encouragement and drew me SpongeBob on the other side. I'm going to be completely honest here and admit I'm not sure which student that was. This little block of wood witnessed the entirety of my student teaching, and it has literally taken on images from that time. It seems like a more fitting symbol now than ever as I look at it and see the unexpected impact students can have on us. If I can remind you of one thing that I've learned here in our time at the University of Iowa, it's that the relationships we have with students are perhaps the most important part of our job. We can teach them the content, but it's the little moments of triumph and support that all of us, the student included, will remember. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We are pleased to have with us for the conferring of degrees for the University of Iowa President Bruce Harrell. Please join me in welcoming President Harrell. Will the candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Education with major in elementary education please rise? President Harrell, these candidates, having completed all the requirements for the degree, Bachelor of Arts in Education, are recommended to you by the faculty of the College of Education for the conferring of this degree.
On recommendation of the faculty of the College of Education and the authority vested in me by the Board of Regents, State of Iowa, I confer on each of you the degree Bachelor of Arts in Education as qualified and designated.
The turning of the tassel is the tradition of gesture by which each student signifies passage from degree candidate to graduate. Now, before we recognize each of you individually, please mark your new status as graduates of the University of Iowa College of Education by moving the tassel of your cap from right to left. If you get it wrong, you have to do it over. Now I'd like to invite Associate Dean Nancy Languth to the podium.
I have the honor of sharing with you and celebrating the accomplishment of not only our college's first BA graduates, but also in recognition of our students that have completed the required coursework to be recommended for state licensure to teach in their respective field. Will the Bachelors of Arts in Education graduates, followed by those being recommended for licensure, please come forward to receive formal recognition.
Brianna Anderson. Zoe Baker. Congratulations. Danielle Cecilia Bender. Jordan Buster. Congratulations. Ismenia Castellan. Congratulations. Margaret Denning. Skylar Fitzgerald. Courtney Fredrickson. Ellen Nat. Haley Goodman. Aubrey Grayway. Allison Harmon. Isabella Marchiori. Emily Miller. Madison Pettit with high distinction. Emily Rayfelt. Madison Richmond. Samantha Roseland. Andrew Schneider. Mika Spees. Emily Wise. Sydney Zima.
Ladies and gentlemen, I now call to the podium University of Iowa President Bruce Harold and College of Education Dean Dan Clay.
Well done. I ask the University of Iowa candidates for certification to teach elementary and secondary education in the state of Iowa to please rise. President Harold, these candidates, as an integral part of their university experience, have completed professional studies in the field of education. The State of Iowa Department of Education recognizes the professional goals of these scholars and has empowered the University of Iowa to recommend these individuals for teaching certification appropriate to their course of study.
The University of Iowa cooperates with the Iowa Department of Education in preparing students who teach in elementary and secondary schools in our state, across our nation, and around the world. The University of Iowa takes great pride in fulfilling its charter mission to educate outstanding teachers. To our students who have chosen to enter the noble profession of teaching and who have met the requirements set by the College of Education in the state of Iowa, I recommend you, on behalf of the University of Iowa, to the Department of Education for certification as elementary and secondary teachers. My colleagues and I extend our heartiest congratulations to one and all.
This weekend, you will leave the College of Education. You can sit down. They still don't know they've graduated. They still following directions. This weekend, you will leave the College of Education and start new roles in the profession of education. Being a teacher is a tremendous privilege, but it is also a big responsibility. Sometimes the going gets tough. How many of you struggled at some point and thought you weren't going to make it? You thought about quitting. I think more of you struggle in that because I saw your papers. I'm just teasing. There will be kids in your classrooms that feel that very way. They will be looking up to you. Some will be homeless. Some will go hungry. Some will barely understand English. Some will have disabilities. And some will question themselves just as you did. I would now like to invite Associate Dean Languth to the podium so that we can recognize our secondary education educators. Let's start with the faculty member for English. Amy, do you want to?
Yes, I'm here. Hello. My name is Dr. Amy Schultz, and I have the honor of introducing the new English teachers from the University of Iowa. I feel really good about the future of the literacy classroom with this group of teachers. They've been a real joy to work with for the last year and a half. Beth Halverson. Tyler James. Amanda Hargis. Ariel Stuslav. Blair Brown. Sierra Combe. Shannon Wright. Yay, English, yay.
My name is Danny Hong. I'm representing mathematics education. Sarah Andrews. Abby Brenneman. Brooke Kreutz. Thomas Eilers. Brandon Graber.
I'm Jeremy Monternac. I'll be representing music education. Haviland Gilbert. Eric Vasquez. Larissa Wilming.
Okay, now it's social studies. I'm Greg Hammond, representing the social studies program. Graham Brewer. Jake Engel. Garrett Gobble. Matthew Hoffman. Drew Matson. Kelly McElroy. Christopher Orabut. Michael Suter. And those are the civic educators of the future of our citizenship.
Hello, my name is Sean Datchik. I have the pleasure of introducing the special education graduates. Li Xuan Feng. Derek Lau. Vincent Lemkuhl. And Lisa Michaels.
So the students in your classrooms will be hungry, some will be homeless, some will be scared about whether they can make it. They'll think just as you thought at times that they couldn't do it. And they will be looking up to you. That's a very big responsibility, but you have an excellent education. And you care. And you will deliver for those kids and all the other kids in your classroom and in your school. Because that's what Hawkeye teachers do. You have our confidence, you have our support, you have our admiration, and may the force be with you. I would like to ask you one final time to join me in congratulating our graduates. Stand up and stand up. You may be seated. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Indeed, what a special evening it is to come together in such a beautiful, beautiful place to recognize the incredible accomplishments of these students who have, through the last few years, given of themselves quite substantially. They leave here with their head full. They leave here with their heart full, and they leave here eager to make the kind of difference that we know they all can make. We are very, very proud. So thank you for coming this evening. I ask that the audience kindly remain seated until the graduates, the platform officials, and the faculty have all exited the stage. Thank you.